It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Ministers reconsider their decision not to award compensation to the so-called Waspi women. A payment scheme could cost more than £10 billion. And Embattled Justice Secretary apologises as it emerges that dozens of prisoners have been freed by mistake over the past 7 months. The outgoing BBC Director General warns against the weaponisation of the corporation's scandals as he attempts to rally staff. Plus,
Police! Police! Where you are?
A Chinese scammer known as the Crypto Queen is jailed over the UK's biggest ever money laundering case. Sky News investigates how the case of a teenager failed by the state highlights a broken care system. The Princess of Wales leads commemorations to honour the nation's fallen on Armistice Day. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That is coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello, good evening. The government says it is reconsidering its decision not to give compensation to millions of women born in the 1950s, known as the Waspi women, who say they weren't given sufficient warning of their state pension age being lifted. Last year, ministers rejected a compensation package for those affected, claiming that taxpayers could not afford the cost of more than £10 billion. But tonight, the Work and Pensions Secretary told MPs the decision was being reconsidered in light of new evidence. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has this report.
It's been one of the most high-profile political campaigns for a decade. 3.6 million women born in the 1950s claim they were cheated out of state pension cash when the retirement age for women was raised from 60 to 65 and then 66. But after rejecting their demands last year, now the government has admitted new evidence has come to light and announced a rethink.
I have concluded that the government should now consider this evidence. This means we will retake the decision made last December as it relates to the communications on state pension age.
In opposition, Labour pledged to pay compensation. But once in government, ministers claimed it would cost £10.5 billion.
I'm afraid to say the taxpayer simply can't afford the tens of billions of pounds in compensation when the evidence does show that 90% of those impacted did know about it. That's because of the state of our economy.
The government has performed a massive U-turn on one of the most contentious issues of recent years, the campaign by the so-called Waspi women for a fair deal on their pensions.
Campaigners are now optimistic.
The government has fought tooth and nail for 10 long years. And now, finally, we feel that they are beginning to see that, the only right thing to do is to move ahead with that compensation.
There's also strong support for a U-turn among MPs.
It was so unfair because the Ombudsman had looked at this and established there was maladministration. These women hadn't given the information they needed about their pension age change, and that led to heartache and heartbreak.
But economists warn against such a huge payout.
I don't think this is a particularly good use of public money, particularly at a time when there are all sorts of other pressures. And while women, I think, some women understandably feel hard done by, I don't think it is a major injustice that deserves billions of pounds in compensation.
And there's no guarantee the Waspi women will get their cash. Pat McFadden said retaking the decision should not be taken as an indication that the government will necessarily pay up. John Craig, Sky News.
The Justice Secretary has apologised after it emerged that more than 90 prisoners have been released by mistake in the past 7 months. David Lammy said 3 prisoners were still on the run. 2 of them are British and 1 a foreign national. Mr Lammy has been under pressure about the performance of both his department and his own conduct in explaining errors to Parliament. Our political correspondent, Mara Cohen, has more.
You Brahim?
I'm not Brahim.
A 24-year-old Algerian sex offender released by mistake and located by Sky News and the police 9 days later.
It's not my fault. Don't give a
In Parliament today, the Justice Secretary revealed he was one of dozens over the past 7 months.
From April to the end of October this year, there were 91 releases in error from prison. We understand that there are 3 mistakenly released prisoners currently lawfully at large. Their prison records show none of these are convicted sex offenders. I have been informed, Mr. Speaker, this afternoon that HMPPS are investigating a further case of a potential release in error on the 3rd of November who may still be at large.
Sharif's release came just days after Hadesh Kebatu, an Ethiopian asylum seeker accused of sexually assaulting a teenage girl and a woman, was freed in error in Chelmsford. He was later deported. A third prisoner, William Smith, freed in October by mistake, later handed himself in. The Conservatives demanded to know why he didn't answer questions on this last week.
It's because, like increasing numbers of criminals in our jails, the Justice Secretary just doesn't know whether he's coming or going. The public are being endangered as this circus rumbles on, week after week, with no end in sight. When will he put a stop to it?
Mr Lammy said he didn't have all the information then and apologised to victims.
I give an unequivocal apology to all who have faced worry or worse as a result of releases in error, especially Hadesh Kebatu's victims, who I'm offered to meet.
The Justice Secretary has said prisons are understaffed, underfunded and lost thousands of experienced staff due to cuts under the Conservatives. These high-profile releases are a very visible failure on this government's watch. The Justice Secretary promised £10 million to help prisons improve their systems, but he admitted more wrongful releases may well come to light. Most of those released in error were later tracked down by police, but questions about money, foreign offenders and public safety won't be as quickly shut down. Tamara Cohen, Sky News.
The BBC's outgoing Director General, Tim Davie, has accused the corporation's political opponents of attempting to weaponise its mistakes. It comes after both he and the Chief Executive of News, Deborah Tenness, quit over a misleading edit of a speech made by President Trump in a Panorama documentary. Mr Trump has threatened to sue the corporation for $1 billion unless he receives an apology by Friday. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, reports.
This was the first time we'd seen outgoing BBC boss Tim Davie since his resignation, stopping for the cameras on his way into work.
I'm very, very proud of our journalists in this building. They're doing work I think that's incredibly important. I want to thank every one of them. They're doing a wonderful job.
First on his to-do list at New Broadcasting House, a 45-minute video call with staff to try to help his employees understand exactly what's been happening at the BBC, with leaked memos alleging institutional bias and billion-dollar lawsuits from Donald Trump fresh in everyone's thoughts.
I see the weaponisation. I think we've got to fight for our journalism. I'm really proud of our work, and the amazing work locally, globally that we're doing is utterly precious. We have made some mistakes that have cost us, but we need to fight for that. And I'm fiercely proud of that.
Questioned on rumours of an alleged boardroom plot to oust Davie, BBC Chair Samir Shah, who was sat next to him on the call, said he didn't believe in conspiracy theories.
If Shah and Davie were hoping to leave the coup talk at that, it didn't work. I'm told staff who'd submitted questions about the alleged plotter-in-chief, board member Sir Robbie Gibb, became so frustrated that their questions were being vetted and not shown to everyone that out of desperation they started writing their questions into the comment boxes that were public, just to let it be known their concern about political influence at the top.
A screenshot sent to Sky News anonymously showed the comments were pretty scathing. Speaking about the BBC's woes for the first time in the Commons, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy said this.
Those in this House attacking the BBC from left and right for not expressing views they agree with should consider just what is at stake. There is a fundamental difference between raising serious concerns over editorial failings and members of this House launching a sustained attack on the institution itself. Because the BBC is not just a broadcaster. It is a national institution that belongs to us all.
The clock now ticking down on President Donald Trump's billion-dollar threat to sue the BBC unless he receives a fitting apology by Friday over how Panorama spliced together his January 6th speech. Litigation perhaps to be expected given Trump's history of suing news organisations, having previously settled a defamation case against ABC and a legal dispute with CBS News. Howard Stringer is a former BBC board member and a former president of CBS News.
You should know when you're dealing with a president, as I did, because I had problems with President Reagan and President Nixon. You've got to be very careful with presidents. They have an army of lawyers behind them. So in your pursuit of your story, truth and fairness must come first. And if you don't get it right, you'll pay a price.
While everyone at the BBC might be keen to move on, with the clock ticking on Trump's demands and the search for Davies' successor, staff here who are used to reporting the news are having to get used to being the story. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
A woman known as the Crypto Queen has been jailed for more than 11 years for her role in the UK's biggest ever money laundering scam. Tianjia Min stole money from thousands of investors, and police say they seized cryptocurrency worth more than £5 billion. Olivia Guthrie reports.
Police! Police! Where you are?
The end of a 5-year manhunt in Britain's biggest ever Bitcoin bust. In bed, the criminal crypto queen who called herself the goddess of wealth.
Do you speak English?
47-year-old Zimin Xian was arrested in York last April.
Okay.
She and her accomplice Seng Hock Ling were sentenced at Southwark Crown Court today to 11 years and 8 months and 4 years and 11 months respectively for dealing in criminal property.
Today, I think, largely draws to a close one of the longest running and most complex economic crime investigations that we've ever undertaken within the Metropolitan Police.
This is how Xian made her money, masterminding a Ponzi scheme, offering up to 300% returns for investors in her Britain Nice Life insurance. But it was a fraud, Xian stealing billions from 128,000 victims across China between 2014 and 2017. She fled to the UK, using her ill-gotten gains to fund lavish clothes, an entourage of staff, luxury homes and international travel.
Madam, appreciate you're in bed. I've just got to record down your name.
Authorities raided her home in Hampstead Heath in 2018, but she wasn't arrested and she went on the run again. Police subsequently discovering billions of pounds of cryptocurrency on her seized laptops.
We've seized 61,000 Bitcoin, which is currently worth around £5 billion, alongside around over £200 million of other non-crypto assets. I think probably lots of people were questioning whether the kind of like decimal point was in the right place and the number of zeros that went on the back of kind of like what the value was at that point in time.
As Xian starts her sentence, there's now a court battle over her seized stolen Bitcoin and how much of the money should be returned to those Chinese victims, many of whom lost their life savings. Olivia Guthrie, Sky News.
A Sky News investigation has revealed a crisis at the heart of Britain's care system. Deaths among young people who have left care have been on the rise since 2020, and it's a problem that's showing no sign of going away. Between the spring of 2024 and this year, 91 care leavers died. That's nearly 2 a week. Well, we've investigated the case of a teenager, Nonita Grabovskite, who was just 18 years old when she took her own life after obvious warning signs were ignored. Our People and Politics correspondent, Nick Martin, has her story and a warning. His report contains references to self-harm and to suicide.
"18-year-old Nonita Grabovskite died after being struck by a train in December 2023. She was in the care of the state. The London Borough of Barnet was responsible for her safety and her well-being. But Nonita lived an invisible life. No trace of her exists online, but the state knew a lot about her. Enough to prevent her death.
Everybody failed.
Everybody failed in their duty to protect a very vulnerable young woman, a child who was crying out to be heard.
For the first time in British legal history, a team of campaigners and lawyers were given the right to represent Nonita at her inquest and, crucially, access to her full case file, which unlocked a shocking story.
We had somebody who was literally just a name to us and who seemed to be quite invisible in a way that is really very unusual. I was quite taken aback by how much had gone wrong.
Nonita was failed by those whose job it was to care for her. The inquest file revealed something quite unbelievable. Nonita predicted her own death. When, where, and how.
She told a specialist mental health doctor that she would end her life by a railway track.
But nothing was done to stop her. In fact, Nonita was sent to live just a few hundred metres from a high-speed railway line.
She should not have been anywhere near that railway track.
It was just so obvious, the risk that that posed. That should have sent alarm bells ringing across those who had contact with her.
And just before turning 18, against professional advice, Nonita's vital mental health support was stopped. 2 weeks later, she took her own life. The inquest papers also revealed that Barnet Council was not originally due to take part in the inquest. The coroner notified the authority, not the other way round. Barnet Council, Nonita's corporate parent, told us they'd carried out 2 reviews into Nonita's death and that they'd cooperated with the inquest process from the point at which it was notified. The North London NHS Trust responsible for her treatment said they learnt lessons too, admitting that the care they gave Nonita was not good enough.
Nonita's case is a heartbreaking one. Everything she experienced during her life, the systemic failures that meant that she was badly let down by so many of the people in her life who should have been there to support her, and the circumstances in which her life ended, which are sadly all too common for children going through the care system.
Does the law need to change that when a child dies in the care of the state, the corporate parent can't just keep quiet about it? They have to be part of the inquest process and the accountability process from the get-go. I wonder what you feel about that.
Certainly that is something I'd be willing to consider in light of the case and the work that you've been doing. I will look at any steps we can take to support children.
Campaigners say the death of Nonita Grabowskaite should mark a turning point in bringing forward changes to a broken system to protect the most vulnerable children in society. Nick Martin, Sky News.
Well, the BAFTA-winning actress Samantha Morton spent most of her childhood in care. During a special programme about the care crisis a little earlier on the UK Tonight, she told my colleague Sarah Jane Mee that the system needs desperate reform.
So I was sleeping rough. And then I managed to have enough money to then get a room in somebody's flat. Nobody gave me a thing of like, we're going to put you on this council list or this housing association list. I'm so furious that things are not getting any better, that things are not changing. Actually, you said you felt good that Faye, that you were in a hotel. That is not okay. That is not acceptable. We pay, you know, the taxpayer pays a lot of money and it is a lot of money. And sorry to bring it back to money, but it's a waste of money if the young people that we're meant to be caring for, we are not caring for. It doesn't make any sense to me. That I wasn't guided back then of these are my options, these are my choices. We're going to try and get you into education, or we're going to try and get you into that YTS hairdressing, Sam. You fall through the cracks, people fall through the cracks. The system, like the NHS, like everything, has been broken over the last 15 years, you know. It's been broken and it's not fit for purpose.
Well, if you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this story, then you can contact the Samaritans on 116 123 or email joe@samaritans.org. Now, the United States says it has deployed the world's largest aircraft carrier to Latin America. It comes as the United States carries out military strikes close to Venezuela on vessels it says are carrying drugs. Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins, who's in Washington. Another ratcheting up, David, then in this war on drugs.
Yes, the USS Gerald Ford has entered the Southern Command area, and you really couldn't get a more overt demonstration of military readiness. It is, as you say, the world's largest warship. It holds 75 military aircraft, including fighter jets, carries a nuclear reactor, and there are 5,000 sailors on board. When you consider that the US already had 8 warships, a nuclear submarine, and F-35 aircraft in the region, and that it only has 11 aircraft carriers at its disposal, you can see that it really is a significant signal. The Pentagon says this will help disrupt narcotics trafficking and degrade what it calls transnational criminal organizations. But the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says the US build-up is clearly designed to drive him from office. Washington accuses him of links to drug trafficking and has now doubled to $50 million its reward for information leading to his arrest. 19 boats have been targeted in recent weeks, at least 75 people killed. And the Trump administration is describing them as enemy combatants who are engaged in armed conflict. But that designation alone, of course, doesn't authorize the use of lethal force. The US needs to demonstrate that there is a threat to its citizens under international law. So CNN is reporting that the UK is now withholding some intelligence because it deems these strikes a violation of international law. The UK government is neither confirming nor denying that report. A spokesman for the government said it is the long-standing position of successive governments not to comment on intelligence matters. The UK and the US have an extensive intelligence sharing relationship ranging from law enforcement through to national security and Five Eyes being the collective name for countries that pool their intelligence. So the US build-up in the Caribbean continues, and the questions continue too.
David, thank you. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has told Sky News that he is front and centre at the COP climate summit in Brazil because Donald Trump has ceded America's leadership. The US president is missing COP along with the leaders of Russia, China and India, all countries among the world's biggest polluters.
Hi, I'm from Sky News. Are you here to launch a presidential bid? Are you here to drum up support on the international stage?
Here in the absence of leadership from Donald Trump, who's abdicated responsibility on a critical issue. I'm here to show up on behalf of my country. I'm here to showcase California's leadership, dominance in the low-carbon green growth space. I'm here because I think it's more than electric power, it's about economic power, and I'm not going to cede America's economic leadership to China.
Are you just here because Trump's not here? Are you here to drum up support internationally? Is this the launch of your campaign?
Thank you so much.
Canada has an industrial...
Mr Newsom speaking there to our climate reporter, Victoria Seabrook. Now, tensions between India and Pakistan are rising after 2 deadly attacks in as many days. First, a car exploded in the Indian capital, New Delhi, yesterday, killing 8 people. And today, a suicide bomber killed 12 people in the Pakistani capital, Islamabad. Well, Pakistan has blamed India for that attack, a claim India denies. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Wackhorn, reports.
Midday outside Islamabad's courthouse. A suicide bomb goes off among the traffic and passers-by. 12 dead, at least 20 injured, but it could have been even worse. The attacker had tried to get into the crowded building, setting his device off outside when he failed instead.
All of a sudden, at 12:30 p.m, the blast happened. The head of the suicide bomber and parts of his dead body flew into the premises of the court. It was a huge explosion, and people started to run. It resulted in chaos. It seemed like a scene from the Day of Judgment.
The aftershocks of this threatened to tip the region back into open conflict. Pakistan blames the Afghan government for this attack and another at an army training school, but believes the Taliban were acting on behalf of India. Pakistan's Prime Minister pulled no punches in this response posted on social media. It is time for the world to condemn such nefarious conspiracies of India, he said. Both attacks are the worst examples of Indian state terrorism in the region. We'll continue the war against them until the complete elimination of the scourge of terrorism. The attack in Pakistan's capital follows this yesterday in India's. In New Delhi, at least 8 people were killed in a massive car bomb near an underground station outside the city's world-famous Red Fort. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi vowed vengeance for the attack, but stopped short of blaming Pakistan.
Our agencies will get to the bottom of this conspiracy. The conspirators behind it won't be spared.
All those responsible will be brought to justice.
Tensions between the two countries and traditional enemies have simmered for months. India launched missiles at Pakistan in May, following an attack in Kashmir. Donald Trump called the clashes a war and claimed to have ended it along with several others. There's no sign yet of him intervening again, but diplomacy is urgently needed to prevent further escalation and the resumption of open hostilities. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News.
The High Court has ruled that asylum seekers can continue to be housed at the Bell Hotel in Essex. It was the scene of violent protests earlier this year after a man staying at the hotel sexually assaulted a girl nearby. Epping Forest District Council argued that the hotel's owners had flouted planning rules, but the judge dismissed the claims. The UK's unemployment rate has risen to its highest level since the COVID pandemic. The Office for National Statistics says the rate climbed to 5% in the 3 months to September. That is up from the 4.8% reported last month and was a bigger increase than predicted. Catherine Connolly has been sworn in as Ireland's 10th president. The independent politician was elected in a landslide vote at the end of October and takes over from Michael D. Higgins, who's been the country's head of state for the last 14 years. The Queen and the Princess of Wales led commemorations today marking Armistice Day. Events were held in the UK and around the world to remember and honour the millions who gave their lives in the First World War and subsequent conflicts. Siobhan Freeman-Powell has this report.
A day the nation pauses to remember. Heads bowed, surrounded by scarlet poppies, the young and the old united in reflection on Armistice Day. In Staffordshire, veterans, faith leaders and members of the public were joined by the Princess of Wales, leading the remembrance service at the National Memorial Arboretum for the first time. Hundreds observed the 2 minutes of silence, commemorating the end of the First World War and reflecting on all lives lost in conflicts since. Princess Kate was the first here to lay a wreath.
My name is Sergeant Leroy, and I wrote this poem inspired by my time in Afghanistan. Seeing faces glass-eyed and broken, stones in throats with no word spoken. Crimson Reef, we shall remember all my people in November.
The Queen led a railway tribute at Paddington Station.
When we remember, we connect with service in a personal way. And when we wear a red poppy or take a moment of silence, we are saying thank you. We have not forgotten, and we will not forget.
The Prince of Wales addressed his audience virtually, recording a message directed at children, explaining the significance of the day. A tribute mirrored by millions across the nation, gathering to mark 80 years since the end of the Second World War, honouring those who served and sacrificed, whilst recognising those who continue to put their lives on the line. Siobhan Freeman-Powell, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll be taking a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the journalist and broadcaster Sonia Soda. Welcome to both of you. Among the stories we will be discussing this on the front page of the Eye. Fresh hope for Waspi women, the paper says, as Labour promises to look again at compensation, and speculation too about the future of the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.